The Nakamura Grand on a Friday evening is everything old money wants it to be. Candlelight, white linen, the low hum of people who have never once worried about a bill. She moved through it all like she belonged there. Because she did. Elora Bennett. 28 years old. Natural hair pinned back. Server's uniform pressed to a crease. A vintage gold watch. Warm, quiet, confident. Glowing on her left wrist as she navigated between tables, with the kind of precision that goes unnoticed until you can't stop noticing it. Then Kumiko walked in. Silver hair, navy suit. The posture of a man who had never waited for anything in his life and did not intend to start. The room shifted. The way rooms always shift when someone like him enters. And he sat down without ceremony. His eyes swept the table. Then they stopped. On her wrist. Is that supposed to be a Patek Philippe? Because it isn't. Remove it before you serve my table. I don't need a counterfeit in my eyeline. The room held one full breath. Elora looked at him. Not quickly, not with surprise. 3 full seconds. Unhurried, unbroken. And then she turned back to her tray as if he had said absolutely nothing at all. See the woman who didn't flinch? That's me, Elora Bennett. And what I'm about to tell you will make that man wish he'd never looked at my wrist. That watch did not come from a boutique. It did not come from an auction house or a velvet box slid across a mahogany desk. It came from a church hall in Savannah, Georgia, pressed into the hands of a 19-year-old domestic worker named Dora Bennett by a quiet Swiss watchmaker she had sheltered when no one else would. His name was Henri Voss. He had spent 30 years making watches for people who would never learn his name, including a private commissioned lot for a prominent European family in 1962. 11 identical pieces, made by hand, each one signed in a place only the maker would know to look. He kept the last one, not out of greed, out of the kind of quiet pride a craftsman earns after a lifetime of invisible work. When Dora opened her door to him, he left it with 7 words. A gift that knows where it came from is worth more than gold. Dora wore it for 60 years. Then she pressed it into Elora's hands and said, "Don't let people decide what's valuable before they know the story." Elora was 6 weeks from completing her master's thesis in horological authentication, the science of determining whether luxury timepieces are genuine or counterfeit. She worked nights at Nakamura Grand deliberately because the clients here were exactly the class of collector she would spend her career dealing with. She studied them while she served them. What Kumiko did not know, what nobody in that dining room knew, was that 3 months earlier, Elora had filed an anonymous report that stopped his company from wiring $40 million for an entire lot of counterfeits. She had saved Rico Industries, under a pseudonym, no name attached, no credit claimed. Not yet. And now his team had called her firm, desperate, searching for the best authenticator available for their biggest gala of the year. They had no idea they were calling her. Stay with me, because the man who called her Watch an Embarrassment is about to find out exactly what it's worth, in front of 400 people and every camera in the room. If you're new here, welcome to La Vida Tales. Hit like and subscribe right now so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it today. We're just getting started. And drop a comment. Should Elora have spoken up in that dining room? Or did her silence say everything? Before the dining room, before the insult, before any of it, there was the apartment. Elora's place was the size of a generous closet, and she had turned every inch of it into a mind. Loops lined the windowsill. Movement charts covered an entire wall, pinned so tightly they overlapped at the edges. Reference manuals, dog-eared, annotated, covers cracked from use, were stacked beside a second-hand desk that wobbled on the left side. She had never fixed it. Every spare dollar went somewhere more important. People assume a woman studying luxury watches must come from money. She doesn't own them, they say. She just handles them. Like the work is borrowed. Like I don't belong in the room with them. At night, the watch didn't stay on her wrist, and it rested on a small square of black velvet beside her lamp, the way you set down something that deserves its own space in the world. Do you know what that watch is actually worth? Because Alora didn't. Not yet. Keep watching. The flashback comes in fragments, the way memory always does when it matters. Savannah, 1962, a church hall. Her grandmother, Dora, 19 years old, fearless in a way that cost something real, opening a door for a man no one else would shelter. A quiet Swiss craftsman with careful eyes who pressed the watch into her hands before he left and said only 7 words. A gift that knows where it came from is worth more than gold. Back in the present, Alora clips her name badge, Alora, Nakamura Grand, and settles the watch onto her wrist. Not out of sentiment, out of principle, a declaration she made to no one and everyone. Before she leaves, she checks her phone. 1 missed call. Unknown number. A voicemail from a private authentication coordinator she has never spoken to directly. She presses play. And the moment she hears the client's name, Rico Industries, her hand goes completely still. 2 days after the dining room incident, Mr. Hatta caught her before she could clock in. He was the hotel manager, perpetually apologetic, and he stood near the hostess stand with the posture of a man delivering bad news he personally agreed with. Rico's team had said something to management the night of the incident, 1 word to the floor supervisor. It had taken a day to travel up the chain and arrive as a formal concern on Mr. Hatta's desk, worded carefully, unprofessional piece of jewelry, creating a perception issue. For everyone's sake. For everyone's sake. Not, we're sorry that happened to you. Not, a guest publicly humiliated our staff. Just, make the billionaire comfortable. That was the sentence that stayed with me the whole walk home. Alora listened. She nodded. She made no promises. Mr. Hatta, who had clearly hoped for more, filled the silence with a tight smile and walked away. If you were Alora, would you take the watch off? Or walk back in tomorrow wearing it like armor? Drop your answer in the comments. Because what she does next changes everything. The next morning, her thesis advisor stopped her in the hallway. Dr. Osei was brilliant and precise, and never asked questions he didn't already know the answer to. He had been circulating the eDora report among his professional network for a month. It had reached him through a colleague at a private firm who had flagged it as exceptional work, unlike anything produced by a credentialed expert in years. Dr. Osei had read it 3 times. Then he had thought about his most advanced student. His curiosity wasn't casual, it was surgical. Interesting authentication methodology in the eDora filing, he said. Whoever wrote it examines movement mechanics the way you do. The same sequencing, the same notation style. Is that right? Alora replied. He knew, or he was close enough that it didn't matter. And if Dr. Osei traced Dora back to me before I was ready, before I had built any professional standing, it wouldn't be a revelation, it would be a liability. That night she returned to Nakamura Grand, watch on her wrist, name badge straight. She moved through the dining room like nothing had changed, because nothing had. Not for her. Rico was at table 7. He looked up when she approached. His eyes went immediately to her wrist. He stared for exactly 2 seconds. Then he looked away and said nothing. Which meant he was no longer dismissing her. He was watching her. And that was so much more dangerous. Here is what Kumi Rico never knew. Here is what nobody knew. 3 months before he called my watch an embarrassment, his company almost wired $40 million for a box of lies, and I was the one who stopped it. Doctor. So she had called her on a Tuesday. A private firm, client unnamed, needed an independent authentication specialist. Sensitive. Urgent. High value. She had 2 weeks. She said yes before he finished the sentence. For 14 days, Elora worked alone. The lot contained 31 timepieces. Patek Philippe, Audemar's Piguet, a single Vacheron Constantin. On paper, extraordinary. Under her loupe, something else entirely. Movement serials that didn't match the production years. Case hallmarks a half-millimeter off. Crown specifications that had been retired before the watches were supposedly made. Whoever built these counterfeits was exceptional. But they weren't better than me. $40 million. One anonymous report. No name on the door. Would you have spoken up? Or stayed hidden? Because Elora chose something in between. Keep watching. She filed the report under E. Dora. Elora. Dora. Her grandmother's name folded into hers like a signature only she could read. The findings were definitive. Every single piece in the lot was counterfeit. Not one was genuine. The wire transfer was canceled within 24 hours. 2 senior executives were quietly removed by the end of the week. No press release. No explanation to shareholders. The firm's name was never made public. That firm was Rico Industries. He sat across a $40 million catastrophe and never learned the name of the woman who pulled him back from the edge. Then 3 months later, he looked at my wrist in that dining room and told me my watch was an embarrassment. And now his team had just called her coordinator asking for the best authenticator available. They needed someone for the gala. Someone they could trust completely. They had no idea they were calling her. She didn't go looking for Marcus. Marcus came looking for her. He found her through the university. 3 weeks of quiet inquiry nobody noticed until he was already sitting across from her at a cafe 2 blocks from campus. Lean, mid-40s, the kind of careful that only comes from rooms where billions change hands over handshakes. He introduced himself as a liaison for a major watch house. He didn't say which one. He didn't need to. I knew within 60 seconds that he'd read the Edora report. The way he watched my hands when I picked up my coffee cup. Like he was already authenticating me. The authentication world hasn't seen a private filing that precise in a decade, Marcus said. Whoever wrote it understands movement mechanics at a level most certified experts never reach. I'd like to know who they are. I wouldn't know anything about that, Elora replied. He gave a quiet smile. Of course not. He didn't push. That was the most unsettling part. Instead, he slid a document across the table, a photocopy of a page from a 1962 private commission record, the paper itself aged and soft at the folds, reproduced from an archive. 11 identical pieces listed in a column, oval face, gold case, a specific crown detail she had spent her whole life looking at from the inside of her wrist. Beside it, a separate printout. Recent, clean, from a London auction house. One watch from the same private lot, surfaced last month. Sold in under 4 minutes. The family that commissioned those 11 pieces has been searching for them for 60 years, Marcus said. One just sold at auction. They believe at least one more is very close. Look at that number. 11. Not 100. Not a production run. 11 watches, made privately, for one purpose. And Elora's grandmother had one. Do you understand what that means yet? Because Elora was only just starting to. I stared at that record for a long time. The description matched perfectly. The case dimensions, the hallmark placement, the exact font of the serial prefix. My grandmother's watch wasn't just a gift from a man who was grateful. It was the craftsman's own piece, the one Henri Voss had kept for himself. Part of a collection. And somewhere out there, 9 more were still missing. She slid the documents back across the table without a word. Marcus picked them up slowly, watching her face. Then he said, "The family has been locating them quietly, one at a time. They're not looking to reclaim, they're looking to document, to close something that's been open a very long time." While Alora was sitting with a 1962 commission record that was quietly rearranging everything she thought she knew, Mikumi Rico was having the worst 48 hours of his professional year. The Prestige Holdings Gala was Rico Industries' most visible event. 400 guests, global press, live authentication of the new collection broadcast to investors in real time. It was supposed to be untouchable. Then the call came in. Dr. Heinz Baumann, Zurich's most decorated horological authenticator, booked 6 months in advance, had suffered a cardiac episode. He would not be attending. He could not be replaced by morning. The director, Yamada, stared at his phone for 10 seconds. Then he started making calls. The first 3 names were unavailable. The 4th was in Singapore. The 5th declined. By midnight, they had worked through every certified expert in their network and arrived at the same dead end. Here's what panic looks like at the top. It looks exactly like calm. Nobody raises their voice. Nobody runs. They just get quieter and quieter until the room feels like a held breath. Someone, a name passed through 2 intermediaries, mentioned the Dora report, the $40 million save, the filing every serious collector had circulated in the past quarter. Whoever wrote it understood watches the way surgeons understand bone. And private authentication at this level didn't require institutional certification. It required a reputation the room already trusted. Dora had one. One anonymous report. And now it's the only lifeline Rico Industries has left. The woman he humiliated built the very reputation his empire now desperately needs. Keep watching, because nobody has made the connection yet. We have one person available, the coordinator told Yamada. She's the best we have. Send me her credentials. You won't find a name attached. That's how she works. But you've already seen what she can do. Yamada approved it without another question. Nobody cross-referenced the hotel. Nobody checked the staff registry. Nobody thought to ask what the E stood for. 2 miles away, Alora's phone lit up with the confirmation. The gala. Rico Industries. The following Friday. She looked at her grandmother's watch resting on its velvet square beside her lamp, and for the first time in days she smiled. She didn't answer immediately. The confirmation sat on her phone for 63 minutes while she stayed at her desk. Thesis notes spread open. The 1962 commission record pressed flat under a reference manual. She read the assignment brief twice. Client. Undisclosed. Event. Prestige Holdings Annual Gala. Collection value. Estimated 90 million. She already knew who the client was. I thought about what Grandma Dora would say. She wouldn't warn me about consequences. She'd look at that watch, then look at me and say, "Baby, you were made for exactly this room." So I accepted. What would you have done? Walked away from the man who humiliated you, or walked straight into his most important night with the truth in your hands? Tell me in the comments, because Alora's answer is about to change everything. That evening at Nakamura Grand, she handed Mr. Hata a brief absence request for the following Friday. 1 page, professionally worded, citing a prior professional engagement. He looked up from it, searching her face for something he couldn't name. Is everything all right, Bennett? Everything is exactly as it should be. Back at her desk by 9, she opened the collection photographs the firm had sent. 32 pieces, high resolution, each tagged and numbered. She moved through them methodically. 28 clean. 3 flagged with minor concerns. Then piece 29, the centerpiece. The crown jewel Rico's team had already cleared and publicly announced. Something was wrong. I felt it before I could name it. The way the rotor sat. The proportions of the crown. Be a shadow in the case seam that had no business being there on a genuine piece. She contacted the firm's security coordinator that night and requested an authorized physical viewing of the holding facility before the gala. Given the collection's value and the last-minute nature of the engagement, they arranged full clearance. She arrived early the next morning, credentials verified at 2 checkpoints, and stood under the light with her loupe for 40 minutes. Her hunch was right. The centerpiece, the watch Rico had already told his investors was the crown of the collection, was not real. And the gala was in 48 hours. The Grand Pavilion was everything Kumi Rico had designed it to be. Candlelight across 200 tables, black tie, white gloves, to the low, satisfied hum of 400 people who expected nothing to go wrong that night. Rico worked the room like a man who had rehearsed his own confidence, shaking hands, nodding at investors with the warmth of someone who charges by the handshake. The collection stood at the far end of the pavilion, lit from below like something sacred. I had been to events like this before, never as a guest. Tonight I walked in through the front. The doors opened. Elora entered. Ivory dress, nothing decorative. The gold watch on her left wrist. A slim leather authentication case in her right hand. The host moved to meet her. The room didn't stop. But it shifted. The way a room shifts when something enters it that doesn't quite match the expected shape of the evening. 400 people, the most powerful room she has ever walked into. And she knows something none of them do. Can you feel the weight of that? Because every person in that room is about to feel it too. Stay with me. Rico saw her from 30 feet away. She watched it happen in real time. His expression cycling through confusion, then recognition, then something she had not expected. Alarm. 3 seconds. He recovered. He turned back to his guests and smiled like nothing had shifted beneath him. He knew, and now he knew, that I knew. And neither of us said a word. That silence was the loudest thing in the room. She settled at the authentication table, opened her case. Loupe, light source, reference gauge, notebook. Then she reached in for one final item. A single printed page. The physical holding facility report from the morning prior. Confirmation of what she had already found. She set it face down beside her loupe. The centerpiece watch sat 10 inches from her hand, gleaming under the lights. Rico was watching her from across the room, and she had not touched it yet. She started with the smaller pieces, not for the audience, but for herself. The rhythm had to be right before she reached the centerpiece. Loop, light, serial trace, movement weight. 3 pieces, nodded to the host. Genuine. The room exhaled. 2 flagged documented set aside. Board members exchanged glances. Then she reached for piece 29. The room didn't know what I already knew. The holding facility report was face down beside my left hand. I didn't need it, but I wanted it there. Proof has weight, even when it's hidden. She examined the centerpiece for 4 full minutes of unhurried silence. The loop, the movement weight, the rotor, the serial prefix cross-referenced against her notebook. 400 people stopped breathing at different intervals. 4 minutes. I'm in a room full of billionaires, press, and investors. 4 minutes of one woman, one watch, and absolute silence. Did you already know what she was going to say? Because the room didn't. Drop your answer below. She set the watch down. She leaned into the microphone. This piece is not authentic. The room detonated. Not loudly, which was worse. It went the specific quiet of a room where powerful people are simultaneously calculating what this costs them. Rico's board members went rigid. His PR director had her phone out before the sentence finished. 2 investors stood up simultaneously, then sat back down. She set the holding facility report on the table. Face up now. And slid it toward the gala's verification coordinator without a word. Independent confirmation of what she had just said. The coordinator read it in 15 seconds and went pale. Across the room, Rico's chief of security had his phone to his ear. His expression was the careful blankness of a man delivering news nobody asked for. He crossed to Rico slowly, leaned close. The authenticator. The eDora filing, sir. Our internal team just ran a cross-reference. The lot numbers from the 40 million report. The notation methodology. It's the same person. A beat of pure silence inside a noisy room. She's the one who saved us 3 months ago. Rico said nothing. He stood completely still. The way a man stands when the floor has moved and he doesn't want anyone to see him recalibrate. His eyes moved across the room to the woman at the authentication table. She wasn't looking at him. She was closing her case, methodical and unhurried, as if the most important thing in the room had already been done. A board member leaned toward his ear. 4 words, barely a whisper. She's the same person. I didn't look at him right away. I let it land. I let him sit inside it. Every assumption, every glance at my wrist, every word he said in that dining room. Then she looked up, across 30 feet of marble and candlelight. Kumi Rico, the man who had called her grandmother's watch an embarrassment, was already staring at her. He knew everything. And in the way that truths move through rooms, so did the people closest to him. The room was still processing when Marcus appeared at the edge of the authentication table. Beside him stood a man she had never seen. Quiet, precise, the kind of stillness that belongs to people who carry large truths. He introduced himself as a representative of the Patek Philippe Heritage Foundation. He set the 1962 commission record on the table. Then he asked to see the watch on her wrist. She held out her arm. He worked for 45 seconds. Loop. Light. Serial traced with a gloved fingertip. His hands held steady. Until the last 10 seconds, when the faintest tremor betrayed a man who had spent 60 years searching and had just found what he was looking for. I knew before he looked up. My grandmother always said the watch knew where it came from. I think she meant it literally. He looked up. This is number 7 of 11. We have been looking for it for 63 years. $2.1 million. The craftsman's own piece, made by the same hands that built the rest of the commission lot, kept as the maker's right, given away as an act of gratitude in a church hall in 1962. The most authentic thing in the room had been on her wrist the whole time. $2.1 million on a waitress's wrist, while a billionaire called it fake. Sit with that for a moment. Drop a comment, because what happens next is the part no one will forget. She heard footsteps crossing the marble, deliberate, alone. Kumi Rico stopped in front of her and bowed. Full, formal, unhurried. The kind of bow that costs a man everything his pride has ever built. I was wrong. In every way that matters, I was wrong. I am sorry. 3 seconds. The same silence I gave him in the dining room. Then I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. He had said the true thing. I would not pretend it hadn't cost him. She clipped her authentication case shut, settled the watch on her wrist, walked out of the grand pavilion without looking back. The gold face caught the light one last time at the threshold, and then she was gone. The man who called it, fake bows to the woman who knew, by morning, in the whole world knew her name, not as a waitress, as the woman who walked into the most powerful room of the year wearing the truth on her wrist, and let it speak for itself. Drop one word in the comments that describes Elora. Just one word. I want to see what you see. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for listening. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Levita Tales.